Reddit, tell me your glitch in the Matrix stories. King weird occurrences, coincidences you haven't been able to easily explain. I'll start. We have a breakfast late on at work every morning, just a simple buffet of eggs, bacon, what have you. Nothing huge, and it's really only to feed about a dozen people or so. I am usually one of the first guys from my team to get to work, and the kitchen was deserted as usual. I walked into the little kitchen. There was a ceramic egg tray thing with 12 eggs in it, like the bottom half of an egg carton with a socket for each egg. All spaces are filled with warm, freshly boiled eggs. I take one, walk over to the garbage bin, shuck the shell, then I walk back over to the food and stop dead. There are 12 eggs in the tray again. No one entered the room while I was peeling the thing. I touched the mystery egg, it was the same temp as the other eggs around it. Not a big thing, nothing major, but something very strange. Given one does not get presented with strange eggs from a parallel universe every day, I peeled and ate that one too. TLDR, found strange quantum egg at breakfast. Ate it. Did not gain superpowers. This will probably get buried. When I was around 20, a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora, pronounced Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason, her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or find out how I was connected to her. After a few months she stopped showing up and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, I'm in the car with a friend stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge onto a highway when I get a phone call from a random number, so I stop the car, but no one answered. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second they get on the highway, some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Turns out the drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't have got that phone call. Called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity, rang 3 times and went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Aurora, please leave your name and number. Never had goosebumps like that in me life. Called it again the next day, because I was that confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers, we get to talking, I tell her my entire story including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number and that she never called me as far as she remembers. Weird. Ask her if she has a Facebook to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. Check her Facebook, holy duck, it's her. If that's not a glitch in the Matrix, then I'm just bat stuff crazy. Not sure if this relates, but about 2 years into my relationship with my GF, we'll call her Susan, I had a dream about my ex. Dream went like this. I was in my room, at my mother's house, where I lived at the time, slamming my ex. Balls to the wall, psyching it up. I knew I was cheating on Susan, but didn't care. So in the middle of it, I look over to the window, which you can see the back porch from, and Susan is there, watching us, crying and mortified. I then woke up. I thought it was a weird dream, but dismissed it. A few days go by and Susan and I are hanging out in my room. She brings up this weird dream she had a few days prior, and describes my exact dream except from her POV looking through the window. Freaked me the duck out, didn't say anything about it at the time. I still haven't said anything, 5 or 6 years later. It still weirds me out. My dad had this little toy monkey that he used to call his favorite child and tease me and my siblings with it. Not in a bad way, but it was really frustrating to us and we spent hours trying to steal it from him. Well, anyways, one day we finally got it and threw it into the garbage after drawing on it and mangling it for a bit. My dad laughed and searched for it a bit, but basically figured we had thrown it out and gave up after a week or so. Anyways, A few years later, when I was about 17, I'm walking down the street in Toronto, I don't live into, was just visiting friends, and see this little orange object on the side of the road. When I walk over to it, I pick it up and see that it was the exact same ducking monkey. It even had the black Sharpie lines on it from when we drew all over it. I honestly cannot even come up with the chances of that happening, especially considering our garbage is sent to a local dump and is nowhere near Toronto. Edit. I actually took it with me and killed it with fire just so I knew it wouldn't come back again. To work in a building that had 3 levels of sub-basements, with the piece of lab equipment I typically worked on in the lowest basement. I had the only key. There was a wired phone in there, and I did work late some nights, but not this night. I was sleeping alone in my apartment when I woke up to a call on my cell phone from my girlfriend at 3 a.m. She was in hysterics and asking why I scared her. Apparently she received a call from that basement phone just a minute earlier, with someone who sounded like me slowly repeating her name until crackling and fading out. My apartment was 10 miles away from work. I thought she was lying, but I saw the 3 a.m. call from the basement phone logged on her cell myself. Still freaks me the duck out. Every so often, I'll have dreams which play out exactly as I've dreamt them, years later. They're usually insignificant moments, so I make a mental note and move on. Same thing happens to me. It happens about once every 4 months or so, but these dreams always seem to come true, and sometimes years later, it's really creepy to experience something you dreamed about 3 years ago. Really screws with ya, doesn't it? Never makes sense when you dream it and so you dismiss it and it is condemned to the depths of your mind. Then one day, out of the blue, months or years later, it happens. Like déjà vu, but not quite. I'm glad others experience this. This happens to me every so often and am certain I had seen the setting/situation before in a dream. I recently have started to doubt if I actually saw it in a past dream or if it was some type of immediate déjà vu black cat walking past the door matrix thing going on. Good to finally hear others do it as well. Edit. Also, whenever this happens I try to remember well what happened next in the dream. I do this exact thing. It varies from random conversations to insignificant occurrences to me informing friends that they are pregnant before they know. It freaks out people because I tell them things they don't want to know or can't handle most of the time. I am learning to keep them to myself because not everyone likes having their sentences finished for them or even being told what they will experience when they go to Subway with me. I don't know everything, I am not saying that. What happens is that I remember exact things I have dreamed about. Example, about 7 months ago I had a dream that some lady with a weird accent and short blonde hair was asking me about how I was enjoying my job. I looked down. There is a cake and an ice cream scooper in my hand. I wake up, the dream makes absolutely no sense to me. Flash forward a few months. I get a job at a cheesecake factory, my supervisor is a French woman with a dirty blonde pixie cut. About my second week of work I am using an ice cream scooper to pour melted cream cheese frosting onto a carrot cake. She comes over and inquires how I am doing with the job. I freeze and a shiver of recognition goes through me. I cannot say the date exactly when I saw this happening, but I remember where in my previous relationship it was, sometime toward the middle of June to beginning of July. Over time I was convinced I was going crazy and that I was just observant of certain things, but then it got out of hand to the point that I would question whether or not this was actually reality. Slowly, I began flirting with the idea of suicide, and death lost its scare factor for me because either it meant that I would die and nothing would happen or I would be forced to relive this life over. My personal theory on how I knew most of this stuff was happening because it already did. This is why I ducking love Reddit. I have shared more of my life with you guys than anyone in this world. I used to work in music and toured with this band. The guitarist, Josh, of the band's best friend, Matt, had died a couple years back. He always talked about the kid and he seemed like a great guy. Josh always had this reoccurring dream where Matt was standing on this abandoned street which, supposedly, was metaphorical for purgatory. Josh had all these conversations with Matt in these dreams, and because he had overdosed unexpectedly, he felt like his spirit was not able to move on. At the end of the dreams, Matt would take a bulb from the street light on the street they were standing in the middle of. Josh described these dreams in extreme detail, and I could pretty much picture what the street looked like. Fast forward to about 6 months into touring with these guys. They were huge Bright Eyes fans and wanted to stop in Cassadaga, Florida. Bright Eyes singer wrote an album there, and it's a really creepy, spiritual medium place. It might be worth noting that 6/7 of the people I was with are all atheists. So we drive into Cassadaga around 2 or 3 am and drive around. Suddenly, this big black dog comes in the middle of the road and just stops and looks at us. The guys in this band were weird as duck and were saying things like "follow the dog. It's trying to show us something." And in my mind, I'm just thinking they are all ducking idiots. We follow this dog for a few blocks, as it was walking pretty slowly. All of a sudden, we turn a street and the dog bolts. We try to speed up, but Josh says stop the ducking van. This is it. We are all confused, and he gets out of the van and looks around. This is it. This is the street in my dreams. We hang out for about 15 minutes, and from the way he described the street, from having houses on the left to a park on the right, it was definitely the street. As we get in the van, a street light goes off and we just drive off. He claims he never had any more dreams about it, as that was closure on everything. Middle school, the entire 8th grade class had to do this thing called a cultural fair, where we research our lineage/cultural roots, and present it after school at night for all families to see. Me and a buddy are cruising the empty halls out of boredom before the whole thing starts, and for some stupid reason, I bet him $10 I can open any locker, and he gets to choose which one. He takes my bet and picks a random locker. He jiggles the handle and spins the dial on this a few times to make sure it's locked. I remember, it was locker number 424. So I look at him, go PSSSSHHH. Watch this. I spin it, 6 right, 24 left, 34 right. I remember thinking, these numbers sound right in my head. The latch lifts up and it swings open. Sort of related perhaps? When I was looking at colleges, I was walking down a stairwell to see a building when I passed a girl about my age. We both met gazes, passed, and then at the same time stopped, turned back around and looked again. For a moment we just stared at each other. It was like I had just run into someone I had known my whole life but had never seen before. At the same time we asked, "Do I know you?" Confused, we spent a few moments trying to figure it out. We swapped names, shared where we were from, where we had traveled, but there was no match up at all. Nothing. She apparently felt the same way, like she'd known me all her life. We didn't know anything about one another, but there was this unexplainable, undeniable connection. Her parents, who hadn't realized she had stopped and had continued walking, came back and hurried her off before I could get her phone or email. "Julia, if you're out there, message me." Edit, before you suggest it, I'm pretty sure we weren't twins. She was black and I am white. Driving home on a storm day, I see that a side road up to the local golf course is blocked off by flashing barricades. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricades with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light in the back seat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. Thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window and rap on the glass and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving, staring straight ahead. My window wrapping or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch, or move. I look over and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and request a code 2, no lights/sirens, unit up to my location to help me check them out. Doors are locked. While on the phone I walk back to my truck to get my go bag. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, she asks me to get a license number for the car just as a PG&E. Power company, cherry picker truck comes rumbling down from up the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number, and the car is gone. I talked to the driver of the truck and he said there was a 80-foot tree down across the road, and that he didn't think it'd be open for a day or so. So the question is, the hell did the car go? Tree up one way, barricades down the other. It's kept me a bit unsettled when stopping at accidents/hazards since then. Ever since I was a kid, I have what I call doubling occasionally happen around me. I put something in a pocket, then later find it in another pocket, as well as the original in the pocket I had put it in. And yes, it has happened to money before, score. The most standout example was when I was a teen at camp. All the leaders had engraved plastic name tags, and we were only issued one. I used to keep moving mine between my hat and my shirt. At the end of camp I just crammed all my stuff in a duffel and headed home. Later when I unpack, the first thing I do is pull out my hat with the tag on it. Okay, so that's where I had it last. And of course a minute later I pull out a shirt with the same name tag pinned to it. I also experienced a similar phenomenon when I was a kid. For a few years it happened on a daily basis, but haven't seen it in a long time. Someone would place something in their pocket/backpack, etc., but when they went to grab it later it would be missing. I would then reach into my pocket/backpack/whatever and pull the item out. I initially got accused of being a thief, but when it happened repeatedly when I hadn't even been within 20 feet of the victim, my friends and classmates stopped doing so and just kind of accepted that that would happen around me. TLDR, I'm a quantum counterfeiter/pickpocket. At 12 years of age my mom let me stay in the truck as she went grocery shopping. As I wait I see an old guy walking towards the truck with an indescribable look at me as if I know too much. He stops 5 feet from the truck, looks at me for a couple seconds and heads back the exact way he came. It was rather traumatic for some reason and very confusing at that age. 5 to 6 years later my dad was showing me home videos of us at Yellowstone. At Old Faithful I noticed the same guy, same look, same clothes peering at us on camera and at me through the TV. I'm freaked out just telling this. Edit, I didn't expect this story to be such a hit. A few more details, the Yellowstone video was from when I was very young. I'm thinking 1 or 2 years of age. I was in an awesome baby pack on my dad's back. Also I will try my hardest to find the video. I don't see my parents often, and if I do I don't think either of them will know where our home videos are. Divorce can be a messy and destructive thing. If I do find it I will definitely post the video and message you all.